Everyone thought they were looking at a soft, helpless bride when 12 armed men stormed into the church. What those men didn't know was that they just walked into a war zone. They weren't dealing with some fragile girl in lace. They were dealing with Phoenix, and she'd been waiting her whole civilian life for this moment.
Welcome to Pick the Helmet, a channel with interesting military stories. Before we continue with this interesting story of courage, tell me in the comments from which city you're watching today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button.
Her real name was Sarah Lane, 29 years old. Light brown hair tucked into a clean updo. Soft eyes that looked like they'd never seen a day of danger. But behind that smile, there was a storm. Today was supposed to be her wedding day. White dress, vows, flowers, cake. She was marrying Jake Walker, the one man who ever made her laugh during a panic attack. The man who never asked too many questions about her past. And thank God he didn't, because even Jake didn't know the whole story. 6 years ago, Sarah wasn't planning weddings. She was kicking in doors with one of the military's most secretive special ops units. Her call sign was Phoenix, because every time the fire came, she rose from it. She'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Syria, and spent months in places so dangerous you couldn't even say their names out loud. She was the last face a terrorist saw before blackout. But everything changed during a mission in Kandahar Valley. They were ordered to move through a village, quickly, quietly, without helping locals. But then she saw them. 15 kids in the line of fire, crying, bleeding, hiding in corners. Her radio crackled. "Keep moving. Do not engage." She dropped the radio, grabbed the kids, covered them with her own body, and she paid the price. "You disobeyed a direct order," Colonel Adams had said, not even looking her in the eye. "You saved civilians," he admitted, "but you broke protocol. You're done here." Just like that, her career was over. No medals, no speeches, just a quiet flight home and a new title: former soldier. Sarah tried civilian life, worked in a vet clinic, waited tables, did some private security gigs. She tried to be normal, tried to be the kind of woman who didn't scan every room for exits, didn't sleep with one eye open, didn't wake up from dreams of blood and sand. Then she met Jake. Funny, calm, gentle. Not a soldier, just a teacher with a big heart. He asked her once, "What's the worst thing you've ever done?" She lied. "Skipped school in 10th grade. He laughed, kissed her on the forehead, told her she was too good for this world. If only he knew. And now on her wedding day, she stood in River Point Church, dress flowing, hands sweating slightly. The smell of flowers mixed with old wood and candle wax. Her mom was crying. Her dad had actually ironed his shirt for once. And Jake, her Jake, was standing at the altar, smiling like the whole world made sense. Then the doors exploded. 12 men, black masks, big guns. One had a scar across his neck. Another chewed gum like he didn't care if people lived or died. They spread across the church fast. Professionals, not amateurs. "Nobody move! This is a robbery," one shouted. Screams, gasps, people ducked under pews. A baby wailed. Sarah didn't move. She didn't panic. She blinked once, and just like that, the years fell away. The church was gone. The flowers were gone. She was back in a sandstorm, back in a combat zone, back in control. The leader pointed his rifle toward the ceiling and fired once. "Phones, rings, wallets. We'll make it quick." A woman screamed as a man yanked the necklace off her throat. One of the gunmen kicked over the altar. Jake started to move toward Sarah, protective, stupid, brave. She shook her head slightly, just enough for him to freeze. She needed to think. 12 men, at least 3 semi-automatic rifles, 2 pistols, 1 knife, a bag for loot. She clocked exits. Closest was 30 feet. No help coming in time. Police? 10 minutes out. Maybe more. People were shaking. Someone was praying out loud. And then one of the gunmen, jumpy, probably new, pointed his weapon at an old man struggling to hand over his wallet. "Move it!" he shouted. The old man stammered, couldn't get his fingers to work. Sarah felt the switch flip inside her. "Wait," she said, stepping forward, hands up. "He's not trying to fight. He's just scared." The guy turned toward her. "Who asked you, princess?" The leader looked over, smirked. "Oh, now the bride wants to be brave." He walked up, grabbed her wrist. "Give me the ring." "Sure," she said, calm as ice. She twisted slightly, not in fear, but in calculation. There was a metal candle stand just behind her, brass, heavy, perfect. In a blur, she swung her body, grabbed the stand, and cracked it across the leader's head. He stumbled back, dazed. Then she moved, faster than anyone in that room had ever seen. She yanked the AR-15 off the floor, jammed the safety off, and dropped to one knee, scanning. "Everyone down!" she yelled. The dress ripped as she crouched, but Sarah didn't care. She wasn't a bride anymore. She was Phoenix once again. And the real fight was just getting started.
The silence that followed was heavy. Every guest inside the Riverdale chapel sat frozen, too afraid to breathe, let alone move. The 12 armed men stood in a rough circle, weapons raised, barking orders, scanning the pews. One of them shoved a guest to the floor. Another screamed, and an elderly woman who whimpered and held her rosary tighter. Sarah Miller stood still in her white dress, her eyes scanning everything. She noticed the weapons. Standard rifles, not military grade, but dangerous enough. She saw where each man stood. She counted exits. She even saw that one of the attackers had sweat dripping down his cheek. Nervous. That could be useful. Jake Carter, her groom, had been pushed down near the altar. One of the men kept a foot pressed on Jake's back. His hands were raised, trying to calm the situation, but his face said it all. Shock, confusion, and pain. He didn't know who these men were. None of them did. Except Sarah. She didn't recognize their faces, but their behavior, the way they moved, it was clear. These weren't ordinary criminals. Someone had trained them. Someone had sent them. And she had a pretty good guess who that someone might be. The leader, a man with a thick beard and a long scar across his neck, stepped forward and shouted, "Everyone stay down. Nobody moves unless I say so." He pointed his weapon towards Sarah. "You, come here." The guests gasped, but Sarah didn't shake. She walked forward, slowly, with her hands in front of her. Her heart was steady. Her training kicked in like it had never left. This wasn't fear. This was control. "You're the bride," he sneered. "Congratulations. Now tell me, where's the general's ledger?" Sarah tilted her head. "What ledger?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped. "We know your history. We know what you did in Mosul. You were Phoenix." A few guests looked up, confused by the name. Jake's eyes widened. He had heard that name before, but only once, and Sarah had sworn she wasn't that person anymore. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Give us the ledger or people start dying." Sarah sighed. "You don't want to do this. Try me." And then, before he could blink, she moved. In a flash, Sarah grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and slammed his arm against the nearest pew. The rifle dropped. Gasps filled the chapel. The man yelled in pain, but she was already turning, kicking him square in the chest. He fell back into another attacker behind him. Chaos erupted. The other men lifted their weapons, but Sarah was faster. She rolled across the floor, yanked a fallen chair into her hands, and flung it at the man nearest Jake. It hit his legs, and Jake used the moment to jump up and tackle him. Guests screamed. Some tried to crawl under pews. Others just watched, frozen. Sarah ducked low and swept the legs out from another gunman. He hit the ground hard. She kicked the weapon away and looked for the next one. Two of them were moving toward her.
She reached under her dress and pulled out a small folding knife hidden in her garter, one of her old habits from field work. She had hoped she'd never need it again. One of the men lunged. She dodged and sliced across his forearm, not deep, just enough to stop him. He dropped his weapon and backed away, groaning. The other one hesitated. She stared him down. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will." He made the mistake of rushing her. Sarah stepped aside and slammed his head against the side of a bench. He collapsed. Across the room, Jake wrestled with another attacker. He wasn't a soldier like Sarah, but he'd served enough years to know how to fight. He landed a hard punch, then grabbed the rifle and yanked it away. 3 men were still standing. One fired a shot. Too high. It hit the wall. Sarah ducked behind the organ. Think. Move. End this. She spotted the chandelier above them, old but heavy, and directly above 2 of the gunmen. She sprinted across the room, grabbed a tall candlestick holder, and threw it with all her strength at the chain. The metal holding the chandelier gave way with a loud crack, and the entire thing came crashing down onto the 2 men. They were buried beneath it, groaning but unable to move. Only one attacker remained, the bearded leader. He looked around at his team, disarmed, hurt, or out cold, and then at Sarah. His face twisted in anger. "You think this ends here? This was just the beginning." Sarah walked toward him, slowly, blade still in hand. "I know exactly who sent you, and you can tell him. Phoenix remembers everything." He tried to lift his rifle again, but Jake was there first. He slammed the butt of the weapon into his chest, and he collapsed.
Silence returned to the chapel. The entire room stared at Sarah. Her dress was torn, her hair a mess, but her eyes were sharp, focused, alive. She turned to the guests. "It's over," she said softly. But inside her, she knew it wasn't. The sirens came fast. Within minutes, police cars surrounded the chapel, their lights flashing against the stained glass windows. Paramedics rushed in with stretchers. Guests were slowly let out, many of them still shaking from fear, holding on to loved ones, whispering Sarah's name like she had come from a movie screen instead of real life. But Sarah wasn't thinking about the crowd. She sat quietly on one of the pews, her white dress stained and ripped, her arms folded over her stomach. Jake was beside her, holding her hand. Neither of them spoke at first. "You okay?" he finally asked, his voice low. Sarah nodded. "Yeah." "You saved everyone," he said. "That was unbelievable." She looked at him. "I wanted to tell you. I really did. About who I used to be." Jake paused. "Phoenix?" She nodded. "I had a feeling," he said. "The nightmares. The way you always sat facing the door in restaurants. The way you taught my niece how to escape zip ties at Christmas." A tiny smile tugged at Sarah's mouth. "I was trying to be normal." "You still are," Jake said, "but you're more than that. You're the kind of person who runs toward danger when the rest of us freeze." She looked down at her torn dress. "I didn't want to be her anymore. I wanted to move on. Just be a wife. Maybe start a family. You still can." Sarah stared ahead at the altar. "Not until I finish this." Outside, officers dragged the attackers into police vans. The bearded leader was last. He had a swollen eye and a bruised shoulder, but his voice still carried strength. "She can't run from it," he shouted as they pushed him into the van. "He's coming for her. He always finishes what he starts." Sarah heard him, but she didn't flinch. A young officer approached. "Ma'am, they want your statement, whenever you're ready." She nodded and stood up. "Just give me a second." Jake squeezed her hand. "I'll be right here." 2 days later, Sarah stood in her backyard in jeans and a sweater, staring at the sky. The sun was setting, the clouds turning orange and pink. Jake was inside on the phone, updating family,
The wedding had been called off, but not the marriage. They'd signed papers at City Hall that morning. It was quiet now. Too quiet. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A deep voice came through, slow and smooth. "Well done, Phoenix." Sarah didn't say a word. "You took out my men like old times. I told them not to underestimate you." Still, she didn't speak. The voice laughed softly. "You know I'm not finished. That ledger you stole, it's still out there, still dangerous. And you know what happens when people steal from me?" She spoke for the first time. "You lost the right to threaten anyone when you started using children to move weapons. That was business. This is personal." "I'll be ready," she said coldly. "I hope so." The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone and looked at the woods beyond her backyard. She knew who he was. Colt Morgan, once her commanding officer, now a man on every international watch list. He had betrayed his country years ago and built a hidden empire through illegal arms deals, blackmail, and disappearances. She exposed him, barely got out alive. And now he was back. Jake stepped outside. "You okay?" She looked at him, then slipped the phone into her pocket. He called. Jake's face hardened. "What did he say?" "He's coming." Jake looked toward the trees too. "Then we'll be ready." Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she walked back inside and into the closet. She opened the box she had buried beneath old blankets and coats. Inside was her field gear: boots, gloves, a worn black jacket with her old patch on the sleeve. She held the patch in her hand. "Phoenix," she whispered. "One more fight."
If you were touched by this story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us in sharing good stories that matter. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.